Okay, so I think we should just get started as people keep coming on.
Okay.
Um, so, like a minute intro for you, so that everybody knows how awesome you are.
You're very sweet.
My friend Stephanie here is known for like a lot of different projects. Currently, the Coroner, Crawford, Anatomy of Deceit, Boy, and the Roster. And you're currently working on something called Sam Heads Home,
Yep.
which is a feature film. So that's super exciting. You were an actor for 10 years, and then you decided to flip everything around and go behind the camera and go into production and filmmaking. And you started something called Miss Night Productions, which is not only for your own creative endeavors, but to give female creatives more opportunities, and also followed the motto of people should stand up and rise up for themselves and become their own knights in shining armor, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody else is looking for another knight in shining armor. So
yeah, and I don't mean that as in a gender way too. I don't think that it's just for females. Like I wanted to give more females the opportunity, as well as my own projects. But I also think it's like, why wait for someone else to save you? Why wait for someone else to give you the opportunity? Just go after it hungry. Go after what you want, you know?
And I think you've started us at like, I think our first like starter subject of the day, and that's like the perfect segue, like you set it up there. That, you know, like following, you're talking about following your dreams and like just doing what you feel like you should be doing. And
yeah,
I think, I mean, for somebody who started out as an actor and then, but like after 10 years decided to like totally transition and, you know, change everything, that in itself is a journey. I think a lot of people underestimate how that kind of shift happens. So what propelled you to make that change?
Well, it came out of frustration. Because, you know, when you are an actor and you perceive yourself to be something, whatever, any gender, any background, you think you're something, and then the industry shows you what they think of you based on how you're cast or what you're submitted for, like based on what your agent, based on what's out there. And it felt very opposite of how I perceived myself. I'd go for like bimbo roles, or I'd go for the girlfriend role, or I'd go for a girl in bikini #1, or, you know, and it also has to do with, I think, the landscape, like the entertainment industry as well, has been very male dominated for the decision makers for a very long time. And women are objectified and women are downplayed unless they already are somebody. So when you're trying to make a name for yourself, you don't want to be bimbo #2, you know? And I was kind of getting sick of being pigeonholed as, you know, bubbly bride or whatever I would get cast for. And I was like, I'm going to write things that I want to play. I want to write roles that I'm excited about. And then I started to be like, oh, I also like directing. And then I really liked producing, because it's a lot of kind of like, as you know, it's very much like a ton of balls in the air, as well as like kind of event planning, right? Like you're planning for the production event, and you also kind of are always planning for worst case scenario. So kind of always like having a backup plan. And I felt like my skills were more utilized and I felt more empowered. And I got to make decisions that I love this industry and I love storytelling. And then also there were lots of women that all of a sudden would be like, oh my God, I love this. Let's collaborate together. Let's do this together. Let's co-write this together. Let's co-produce this together. And I mean, like, they're not huge, big budget feature films, and they're not, you know, like it's not the stars of the world, but you have to start somewhere. You can't expect to be an A-lister overnight.
Of course.
Yeah.
But ever since you've transitioned behind camera, did that change whether you wanted to be in front of the camera, or like, have you been in front of the camera ever since?
Yeah, I did a web series, a lead in a web series, and then I've done some commercials I've still like auditioned for things. But I think that it kind of took that pressure off, right? When you're trying to pursue something as your main income and all your hopes and dreams are also in that same pot, and then you get discouraged or you get rejected or you can't book for 6 months or a year or whatever, the pressure is so huge. Like you can feel it on your shoulders, you can feel it on your chest, and it takes away the inspiration. So when it becomes a secondary income or a hobby in a way, you know, it's more fun. You haven't done any in front of the camera work, right?
I very recently have, but
Really?
I can't, not
I
nothing
can't discuss
major.
it. I've signed an NDA.
No, this is one of those, like, I was working on a film and I'm crew in the film, and then suddenly next thing I know, like I'm part of secondary cast. So it wasn't something I was planning. Like I've
So
never.
how did that make you feel? Like how did you feel being in front of the camera?
Uh well, I don't like seeing myself on camera, and I haven't at any point, like, because I think my first um, tryst with this entire industry was when I did some theater in high school, and I didn't like it. Like I loved doing theater, but I
Mm-hmm.
did, when recordings and stuff like that, like I didn't like seeing myself. I was like, okay, this just looks terrible. Um, it's the same way, like I don't like hearing my voice. But this was like, and I've worked on this film from like start to like now we're in post, so it's weird having to see myself all the time, and like, actually it's I think doing it was really fun because it was like challenging, and I had to, like, be somebody who's actually 10 years younger than I am, and play that role, and to see, also to get feedback and to see so much support and feedback from people who've had like years and years of experience, like, and to hear their input, and to also hear their appreciation for, like,
Mm-hmm. For your work?
yeah, and
Yeah.
like something that you never thought that you would be doing,
Yeah.
and it just randomly happened.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you just fit that part. Um, like, like it always, I feel like, it's so humbling to see, like, and to feel the support and the belief that fellow, like, crew members and cast members and your director and has in you, like,
Yeah.
it's very I don't know, like, the right word for it. It's very
Like
overwhelming.
humbling?
Yeah, very humbling, but also I
Mm-hmm.
think it, like, it pushes you even further, because you feel like, you have to, even if you feel like you can't do it, you have people who believe that you can. And
Mm-hmm.
so for them, like, you got to do what they think you can do. And I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the fact that they believe in you so much makes you do something that you never thought you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
that's
think it
happened
also,
to me multiple times. So yeah.
I feel like almost every filmmaker should always be in front of the camera at some point in their life to understand it too. I just think it makes you a more well-rounded filmmaker.
Oh, definitely. Like, I feel like it goes both ways, like I always.
Yes, yeah, true. Like at least have like an actor do whatever, be a PA or do something on set so they understand how hard crew work.
And it's not just how hard, you actually understand how something comes together, and how
Mm-hmm.
intricate that process is. And I think for a lot of people, especially people who aren't in the industry, right, they don't, like, get it. But it's not their fault that they don't get it. Like, it's just so, it's this different fantasy world that we live in day and night, and we
Like
seem like this glam world, but we're
as crew
actually
or
not.
as cast or which way?
I'm saying, for somebody who's totally
In general.
outside, right, like the
Yeah.
industry, we seem like this totally, like, glam industry, right? Like, because that's what they see, like the red carpets and um, the awards, and on screen,
Or the celebrities in the
fabulous.
film. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but like what they don't see is the fact of, like, so many, like, people coming together creatively, collaborating,
Mm-hmm.
and also, basically living in sweatpants or like,
Yeah, it's a grind. It's such a grind.
on
Yeah.
end, like working like I don't know X number of hours. Like it's different for cast, it's different for crew, like each member of crew. I mean, like I've been part of the direction and like the cinematography team, like but in different ways. But so our hours are different, but and our creative stuff goes on beyond set. But then you have like the grips, the electrics, like and the camera, like the actual camera team, and for them lighting and for them like their days start way earlier than everybody else's and way later than everybody else, and it's so much physical like labor. You really like you don't see that for every moment of what you see on screen. Like there's so many hands involved, everybody.
Totally.
And like there's nobody like less or more than somebody else. Of course, like it's the director's vision, the producers, like a huge part of like the process. But I feel like for each moment, each physical moment of what's created, there's so many like people are so important, to make that happen.
Yeah. And I think that you and I have a similar belief system about that. We've talked about it many times because you and I have no patience for divas, like the ego where people are like, oh, they're just this or they're just that or they're just PAs or they're just craft or they're just it's like whoa. I don't have time for that. Everyone is a very important piece of the puzzle and they all have a job to do, and they're unless they're lazy or late or slacking off or whatever, and then they need to be reprimanded or something. Generally, I respect everyone who do a good job and every job that they do. It's important to be respectful to people regardless of what their position is, regardless if they're P or a PA or craft or an extra or whatever.
And there's so many times, like I remember for me, I did my first like big, like as in big project. When I say big, I mean with like a huge crew just 2 years ago for the first time. And like this is like huge. It was like in hundreds. Like every person I met, even I thought on the street was like commoner was actually part of the crew, and I'm like,
right.
How many people are here? Like who are in this crew? And there's so many things that I learned, like from like spot boys and the catering people and like the like props and everybody, like assistants and costume assistants and like you learn so much, like and it really like it being on camera, off camera, like I think it's so important to not only acknowledge that there's so many people involved, but actually learn from them, because the way they see the same world that you live in is totally different, and there's just so much out there like to get from that. I think learning, like life learning, like not forget like everything else, just life.
Yeah, I love that about each department too, like talking to different people about what their challenges are, what are their bottlenecks, what frustrates them, because I feel like those are the things that make me not just a better filmmaker, but will make me a better boss when I'm running my own, whether it be series or film or an EP something, or like whether I run a studio one day or wherever I go. I think that everyone's position is valid, and there's a way to acknowledge and fix it, and a lot of it comes through communication.
And the most effective communication is like what you were talking about, like leaving your ego at the door. Like and it's not, when I say that, in like high amount of respect for everybody and very very like no judgment at all. In that sense, like for I think the idea of leaving and your ego at the door is not something that is it's beneficial for the team for sure, and everybody you're working with and all of that. But I think it's the most beneficial for you in itself, like that will help you like do your best in this, no matter what position you are in, like
I agree,
whether you're the lead or you're like the onset like nurse, like you're going to be like, you're going to be able to do your best and get the best experience from that project if you leave your ego at the door. You know, there's just so much like, wow, like it's that kind of like, you never know who you can meet. You never know who's going to be your closest friend, or who's going to be your mentor on this. You don't know, like, you know.
I think it's just a lot of openness too is what it brings.
And in terms of that, like, in going from front of camera to behind camera to still working, like, you know, and enjoying working in front of the camera, you know, when you can, has it changed how people perceive you, like people in the industry I'm talking about, like, you know, or other like, for example, when you go in for auditions, or when you go, like, has it changed how they perceive you, or how, quote unquote, like, seriously people take you?
I feel like I'm perceived differently behind the camera. I'm treated differently. It depends on what you go for casting. Like if you're going to a cattle call, which is basically when they just generally call any woman 20 to 30, you know, of this whatever height range or look or all ethnicities or whatever, and it's a commercial and they don't know what they're looking for, and you know, that kind of stuff, where it's not really personal, it's just kind of 500 actors that they see in a day. I think you still get treated the same way. I think that my perception is a bit different because I know who's in the room, or I know who's running the audition, or I know that it's not about me. You know what I mean? Like I'm less, not insecure, but I'm like less self-conscious going into an audition now for me. And then behind the camera, it's just like easy. It's not like I don't need to try and impress anybody. I don't need to try and book anything. I don't need to. It's just like all those skills that I already have as a human being are beneficial behind the camera. And it feels right. It feels like I don't have to try to be something I'm not, which is weird because some people say that about acting and some people don't, that you're trying to be someone that you're not. You're trying to be, you know, you're pretending. And some actors don't say that. Some actors will be like, oh, I'm being, or I'm method, or I'm this or that. Everyone has a different perception because acting is very personal, right? It's very subjective. So I think my perception has changed from both, but I feel more valued behind the camera. That could have to do with like booking. So I might feel very different if I was the lead on a show and be like, oh, I feel valued because I'm working and because people recognize me or whatever. But that might also have been a falsehood, right? Like it might also be ego when you feel validated or valued based on people recognizing you, or based on people knowing your name or whatever, right?
Which, but let's not lie, like front of camera, behind camera, it gives you a weird kick. Like it's
an ego kick for sure. Yeah.
In terms of like when you, as both as an actor and as a producer, you know, you like, we always talk about in any other career path or at any other point, like we always talk about like pitching, you know, like when you're pitching a project. I feel like both actors and producers have to do that because like producers in general are pitching a project, or like, you know, for funding, like especially independent, like, you know, when you're trying to like do grants or whatever, and actors are kind of in that sense pitching themselves as like, you know, somebody for this role. How do you, when you walk into a room as an actor, or when you walk into a room as a producer, like studying the room and actually gauging how to like maneuver it, like, you know, because I'm sure it's similar but very different, I feel, from each perspective, and you've done both. So
yeah, it does feel different because you're pitching yourself, so you're being more like you're being more watched as an actor. You're being watched more. So everything, it feels like everything is more heightened, like you're criticized more, whether you are verbally or not. It might be, oh yeah, I didn't like the way she did that, after you leave the room, and that's why we're not casting her. Whereas producing, you can just be yourself and you can just talk about the project and you have your pitch ready, and you know, and it's not about you. You might be a part of the sale of it because they like that producer, but it's about the concept. So it's kind of not about you. So it definitely feels less pressure. You watch the other people more than they watch you, I think, as an actor.
But going to it for the first time, for somebody going into it for the first time, either like, you know, room as a producer or as like, not even producer, as a creator, let's say as a creator or as an actor, like, how do you prepare? Like, what would you say, like, are the must, like, things to do before you walk into that room?
Either or?
Yeah.
Or both? I think something that has always helped me, and I think a lot of actors and mainly actors, but it's beneficial as producers and writers and directors as well, is I've done a lot of yoga and a lot of meditation and stuff. So I think a lot of breath work is really important as an actor. And then it also normally, by that journey, you also get to know yourself really well, which is extremely beneficial as an actor. So, and then it kind of passes over to become a filmmaker too, because if you know how to calm your nerves, if you know how to, you know, make good eye contact and listen, like those are just basics, right? Like eye contact, listening, and breathing, and just trusting the process and just trusting in the work you've done, whether it be a pitch to get funding or whether it be a meeting and you're trying to network or you're auditioning, like just trusting in yourself and also kind of doing it for the right reasons, I think is really important. We talked about that the other day too, that, you know, when you are going after whatever you're going after, whatever your big dream is, do it for the right reason, right? Like whether you want to be a physiotherapist, whether you want to be a filmmaker, you want to be like the best elementary school teacher, you want to be a principal, like you want to be a nurse, traffic cop, whatever you want to be, do it because you love it and it gives you fulfillment. And then you also get paid for it, right? Like, I think that whatever your dream is should always be what gives you joy, you know? So, I mean, like, and then there's the kind of tools that you learn along the way, which is like, for me, has always been yoga, meditation, centering myself, you know, trusting that it will or it won't work out. Like, and my value is not held in it working out or not, right? Like, I'm not less of a person or less of an actor or less of a filmmaker if I don't get funding. It's just a different challenge. It's like, okay, so what's the next avenue? Okay, should we rework the pitch? Okay, is it the people involved, you know? Or like with films and then acting, you either do or don't get it, or you get a call back or you book it. And then there's even lots of actors that I know book the role and then still doubt themselves. And they're like, do you want to phone the director himself and tell him that he made the wrong choice? Go ahead. If you really doubt that you were the right person for that role, then do it, right? Most people would never do that because they're like, no, I don't want to lose the job. I don't want to miss out. But I think like having confidence is important and going after what you want, but like do it because it fulfills you, you know?
But sometimes, like, I think it's important to acknowledge that, especially when you're starting out and like as an emerging artist, like whether like an artist starting out or somebody who's like in the process, a lot of times you either, no matter in front or behind the camera, you get offered roles or parts or stories that are projects to be part of that don't creatively fulfill you or don't fit with your belief system.
Yeah.
You know, and in that kind of space, like,
that's challenging.
Like, what do you do? Like, you know, in that sense, like, do you go with it? Like, you know, because you need, like, you're desperate for a job, you're desperate to like build your career and get one more project in your pocket, or on your reel or whatever, or do you decide to step aside and say, no, like this clashes with my belief system, or this doesn't fulfill me creatively, so I'll wait for something. Like, as somebody who's started from scratch in this industry, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's going to have a different perspective on that, right? Like, for me, a non-starter always as an actor was I would never do nudity. I'd never do topless scenes. The one thing that I kind of made a concession on is I did a Bodog commercial, I don't know, 15 years ago. And it was in a bikini. And I was really uncomfortable. It was green screen. There were like 50 crew members. I had been at my sister's because they were doing 3 different commercials in that same space. So there was lots of crew, lots of craft, lots of wardrobe. Like it was kind of a well-funded commercial. And I had been at my sister's stagette party the weekend before we shot on the Monday, and I had been bitten by black flies. We were at a lake, so I had like 50 black fly bites on my back. I was so insecure. I had to have a bald cap, and then I had to like flick my hair off and stuff. I was so uncomfortable. I felt so objectified. I felt so watched. It was like, I mean, like, I just felt so insecure. And yet wasn't interacting with anything else because it's all green screen. They added unicorns and rainbows and all this stuff afterwards. And I felt objectified. I felt awful. I mean, I really liked the check. That was nice to get paid. But that was my one concession I made. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I would do a bikini thing again, right? So some people have like, whether it be body or language or something. I knew a bunch of Christian actors in Vancouver when I lived out there too, that wouldn't do certain content, that wouldn't do certain language content. And then there are some people that won't do, you know, like not supporting roles, but some people won't do lower than what they've trained for, especially if they're thespians, you know, like, but I think it's up to the artist, whatever it be, like whether you're an actor or a filmmaker or both or whatever, it's your life, right? It's your career. I'm sure like you've had some hard content with Deepa too. Like, not that I think that I don't know, you can speak to that, but I don't think that it was stuff that you didn't agree with, but it was heavy content, really heavy content, which you take that home, it affects you, right? I personally can't watch horror films. I don't think I would want to be in a horror film, but I might be part of a crew for a horror film. Like everyone has to, you have to make your decisions, and you're allowed to say no, especially this time in the world, right? Like women have been empowered and they've said enough is enough. You know, the Me Too movement has really kind of like pulled back the curtain to see like who's really controlling this industry, and how women have been objectified and made to feel and belittled. And, you know, they've had power hung over their heads, and they've said, you know, I'll give you this role if you do this for me, or whatever it is, all those different things. Now we're at a point, and you can, maybe it'll ruin your career, maybe it won't, but you have to do what you can live with, right? Like, why do a topless scene if it makes you ill to ever talk about it, or you regret it, or you feel like it's this black plague on your resume, right? Like, and the same thing for men. Like, would they really want to play the rapist? Could they live with that? Could they go there? Could they make it believable, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you're starting out, you're kind of vulnerable, right? Like, you're kind of just starting out, you want to be accepted, you want to do the right thing. I mean, how did you feel about the film that you made with Deepa? You were the DP on that, weren't you?
Yes, for like my first feature. I mean, see, that's the thing. Like, I've been really lucky, I think, to not only work with somebody who's works on really powerful and amazing projects, but also to work on projects that really have both pushed me and also been things that I really like have meaning for me. Like I really want to shed more light on. Like, I've been really lucky to have that. Yes. Like, I mean, Anatomy of Violence, which you're referring to, which was based on the gang rape case in Delhi. I can tell you, I'm still carrying it with me today. Like,
yeah,
it was that intense, but I don't feel like I'm living with that. Like, you know, I feel like it's a good the fact that I went through that. And it's so real, like in terms of society and how aware it makes you of your position and who you are. You know, both as a human being, as a woman of color. Like, it makes you so aware of so many different things. But I think just knowing that you did something so meaningful that will hopefully make somebody somewhere more aware, or somebody somewhere feel like they've been represented, or, you know, their stories are being heard and seen. Like, you know, I feel like every project so far that I've gotten to do, whether my own or with Deepa, like, have all like been something where I feel have had so much meaning, whether it was this for Anatomy of Violence, or in Lela, talking about women, and talking about like it's anti-inhumanity, like anti like misogyny, anti-patriarchy, like, and all of that, and or everything else so far, or like even the series that I made with Cam H and with Gurshan, who was our guest last week, the Roshni Project, where we focused on mental health and South Asian women, like young women, especially here in the GTA, and their stories, like I think all of these projects, including the one that I'm working on right now, have brought so many different shades to me as both a human being and as a filmmaker,
Yeah.
And I feel so honored and grateful that I got to work on things that have brought me meaning, and I hope have brought other people, some sense of feeling it, just some sense of the fact that they're not alone out there, and there's people out there who are wanting to share these stories and wanting to do that.
I admire the fact that Deepa makes these projects, and you as well, especially with the Cam H series that you were doing too. Like, it's heavy stuff that people can't really talk about in daily life, right? And a lot of people struggle with just having the conversation. So the fact that she not only dive in, but like do it in a big scale is amazing, and I'm sure benefits many people that get to see these projects.
And I think it is a responsibility, like as a fellow content creator, like, I mean, that's what got me started on this like live series. Like, it's something like I said, I don't like seeing myself on camera, and
you're doing great. You look great.
Thank you. But it's I think it's always like, for me, like personally, I feel as a content creator, I'm responsible. Like, I need to hold myself responsible. It's not about somebody else holding me responsible, or society, or people saying, why are you not doing this, or why are you not like representing but me feeling on my own, like holding myself responsible for the content that I create, even like I'm not trying to say, oh, like things that are comic or super like entertaining, like or blockbuster commercial, like really like fun films that just entertain people, like, it's not about any social awareness at all, are irrelevant. No, like I think those are really important, because it takes like, somebody who like steps into that world and into like a cinema hall, or on like when they're watching it at home on like an online platform, like it takes them to another world where it like helps them relieve something maybe that they're carrying with them in their real world, like, and takes them away from that for a few minutes or for a few hours, or I feel that is as important as something.
Or it could also be something they are going through too, like maybe you're talking exactly to that audience member.
And I think so either way, any kind of content I feel is so important, but I think for me, like I've always thought about it, especially being an emerging like, artist. Like I haven't been in the industry for that long. I wonder like what would happen if somebody asked me to make a project that clashed with my belief system. Like, would I do it like just because like it would be a good thing for me to do for my career, or like, or because it clashed with my belief system, would I be able to say no? I'm hoping that my gauge of wanting to do something meaningful and sticking by like my own beliefs would keep me grounded in that moment.
I think it will too, and I think I had an acting coach in Vancouver who I didn't really click with that well, but there was a few things that he had said that I always really liked, and he was like, as an actor, you need to get to know yourself well, and you need to know yourself inside and out, and what you will and will not stand for, and what makes you you. And I think that filmmakers need to know that too, because if you are propositioned with something that you're like, oh, I didn't know that I wasn't okay with this. I didn't know that I wanted to say no to this until I was offered it, right? And I don't think that saying no is a bad thing. I think that it's your boundaries. It's what you will and will not work on, and what you will and will not do. Like if you were busy working on something and someone asked you on a date or whatever, and it wasn't someone that you wanted to date, but then you did it anyway, and be like, why are you dating that person? You know, like, especially if people know you and they're like, Maitili, why are you working on that project? That's really weird. And it doesn't seem like something that you would do, right? Whatever it may be. I think it's important to know what you won't do.
And I think what helps with that, because I've been thinking a lot about it, especially looking at a lot of projects and films and things that I've seen, that I feel like, what were you thinking when you made this? Because it, like, you're kind of normalizing so many really, really intense, hard, and like subjects like trauma and things. Like, you're normalizing abuse. I've seen, like, there's a film that I saw last year that actually normalized abuse, and I felt so, like, it was such a trigger for me, and I just, like, every time I think about that film, it just makes me so upset. Like, you know, and I think
Was it like spousal abuse or sexual abuse, or which one? Or physical or verbal?
It was a feature, Bollywood feature movie that like aced at the box office. Like, you know, it like got, like, I don't even know how much it made, because it made that much. And like, I just felt like, you know, now every, like, contemporary male out there, you know, would want to be that lead guy and say, oh, if he can do it, so can I.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Know? And for me, I was like, and it wasn't even like, you know, actors and people who were just starting out, like the lead,
it was established artists
who've been established for the past 15 years. You know, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, I know that same thing happens in Hollywood films, where you're like, oh, look, it's the doting wife, and like, look at this vapid female character, or like, oh, it's the 5 male superheroes and the 1 token girl, and like, can she not be a woman of color? Why can't you have like half the women and half the men? Like, there's so many things where you're like, oh, okay. And like, we even talked about that, you and I talked about that the other day, about like casting and what it projects to us as well as the next generation. Like, it shouldn't be an anomaly that Black Panther had an all Black cast. It shouldn't be an anomaly like, oh, look at that all Asian show. Like, we should be at a point now in 2020 where we're not like, yes, people of color, yes, there has been racism and oppression, but we should stop with all of this and push equality more, so that it's not so talked about when there is inequality.
No, which is what, like, whether we're talking about in film, like, and that's the thing, right? As a person of color, like, of course, I feel like it's so fantastic that people are, like, you know, actors and filmmakers and anybody else are getting that kind of recognition, and you're getting that spotlight. I'm like, about time, you know.
Yes, totally.
What I'm waiting for, like you said, is the time where it's not identified as, oh, you know, like this film that had an all Asian cast.
Yeah.
I'm like, this should just be a film. Like, you know, like, why are you going to a film and saying, this is a film with an all white cast? How fantastic.
Yes.
Like, you know, like it's about, no, like, it's about recognizing and giving people, like, every race, every gender, every, like, you know, orientation, that kind, so much equality,
same exposure,
so much, that, like, it's the same, like, you know, the blanket. Like,
I actually, it's funny because I picked Livy, my little girl's cartoons based on the representation in it. There's a new cartoon she started watching. I'm like, okay, why is this a white family? Why does this have to be a white family? And then there's like, it's a little weird because then there's some animals that can talk and whatever, but it's like, oh, the Black family down the street and the Asian family. It's like, why can't we just start mixing them? Like, why do you have to have the central character be a white boy and then it's a white family and it's whatever, it's just a cartoon, but it's messaging and it becomes imprinted on their mind, and then by the time they get to school they are already kind of segregating in their mind, right? Exactly. It starts young.
And that's the thing, right? Like, it's things like that, like, it's things like that, and it's segregation like that we're like fed, whether it's through content or what we hear, what we read, or whatever, that develops into something where, like, we have such an important movement like Black Lives Matter, and you have people out there saying, but don't all lives matter? And I'm like,
yeah,
it gives me so much grief. I'm like, yes, I'm not saying your life does not matter. Like, you know, it does. But there's this entire community that has gone through so much that you cannot even fathom. And instead of acknowledging that and saying, how do I help? How do I give you that same kind of respect, recognition, and what do you call it? The space in society, the same space in society that I occupy. How do I give it to you? And how do I give it to you? How do I make sure that you get it because it's what you deserve?
Yes.
Like, instead of doing that, you're wondering, do I not matter? Like, you know, is that what you're saying? And I'm like,
it's funny because I feel like when people say like, oh, all lives matter, I'm like, you know what it really comes down to? It's for so many centuries, it has been only white lives matter for so long. And now that like, oh, Black Lives Matter and all these different things are coming up, it's like the people that say all lives matter don't understand that has like A, white privilege, and B, that other races have been oppressed for so long. But I think it, like, I mean, in this instance, like in specifically this topic we're talking about, it's important that a lot of people that are of that mindset hear lots of different perspectives, so maybe their opinion can shift and change, and they can understand what it is like for people of color, or what it's like for people to be scared to get pulled over by the police, to get scared of jogging at night, to be scared of, you know, just racial profiling. We talked about this too, about the airport. Only people of color know what secondary is. White people rarely go there. You know, like all my friends that are Black or Indian or, you know, like whatever they are, all, if they have a Muslim last name, if they have anything that is not gentrified white, they get pulled in.
They're always wondering, like, what is going to be flagged? Like, you know, what, like, you know, and at the airport, anywhere, like, anywhere, walking down the street, and you're wondering, what is it that I'm doing that could get flagged at this point? You're thinking about it before you step out of the door. For some of us, it's like a smaller thing. Like, I can't say that, oh, that's something that's a huge burden on my mind all the time. No, but I'm saying for somebody, this is their moment to moment, second to second reality. You know, so how, like, you know, if we keep going on about, but all lives matter, you know, or in that sense of like, oh my God, like, this is such an amazing, like, Asian film, like, you know, I'm like,
I know what you mean.
No, like, yes.
I know what you mean. It's hard though. It's a hard position to be in because there does need to be like the Asian film festivals, the only Black, you know, film festivals, or whatever it is, maybe it not even just entertainment, but things so that there can be more chances and more opportunities given to minorities and people who wouldn't typically be given those opportunities. But at the same time, wouldn't it be great if across the board, every gender, every race was given the same opportunity at every film festival or every competition or every university or whatever, if it didn't matter what your background was or what your last name was, you know?
Exactly. And I think as, like, when we're thinking about, like, creating, you know, it's not, like, you know, it's not about just creating characters or creating, like, writing characters that are diverse, but it's also allowing the fact that the characters that you are pre-existing, and saying that those same characters could be played by diverse performers. You know, like, you just because you're saying, this like 25-year-old male. You know? Why does that 25-year-old male have to be fitting this just because that's what you've seen so far?
Yeah.
And now you're like, oh no, but like, we need to bring a diversity aspect to this. So let's write in a character. No, like, why could that character not be like
Indonesian?
Like, why?
And that's, you know what, that's why I really like working on this show Coroner. We're going into season 3 now. they have they give opportunities to people who typically might not have been given an opportunity on another show. You know, they might not have as many directing credits, they might not have as many writing credits, but Morwen, the showrunner, and Adrian is the EP as well as the director, make sure they go out of their way to give opportunities to people that wouldn't normally get it, whether it be like they're Indigenous and they've written for like 2 shows, but they feel like not objectified, but they feel like they're not getting those writing roles or those directing roles or whatever. A lot of females are in the writing room, a lot of diverse talent who are so grateful for these roles and these opportunities. And as well, they get to help with casting too, which is so cool, you know? Like, it's so cool that there are women in power that are giving opportunities to people who look like them and don't look like them, right? Like, it's amazing. And I hope more shows start to do that and start to cast as the world looks, as opposed to what they've seen on TV for 100 years.
And I think that's, I think something we all need to aspire to, you know, whether it is doing that in our own content or in our own lives of how we perceive like everybody around us wherever we go, or even in the fact of like when we said, you right, like we're talking about creating boundaries and creating that like seeing, also acknowledging, are these things that I'm creating for myself, are these, you know, are they going to affect somebody else, you know? Are they, like, what is the impact that's being made, you know? It's not about personal. I think everything needs to be seen both in the universal and the particular, right?
Yes.
And I think it's only that way where we, like, especially in terms of creating, is where we're going to keep going forward, because we have to keep growing from our own, like, you know, like, even like as somebody who's like a woman and colored, like I can tell you, like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to make like errors down the way and like forget, like not be able.
No, you don't make errors.
The
error is human. We all make mistakes.
Yeah, no, but like I'm sure that even like coming from that background, I would still like maybe like say something or do something inappropriate, or like somebody would be like, but did you consider that? Or it's not, and that's when that ego thing comes into play, right? It's like, oh, like, I didn't think of that. Like I haven't had that experience, but somebody else who is like also a woman of color would have had. I'm like, oh my God, just because I'm a woman of color doesn't mean I'm the standing authority on all women of color. Like,
totally. And you know what? And I think that's a great point, because the other thing too about that is that we have to hire people that feel that they are able to tell us that, hey, I know you're my boss, but you're kind of coming across as this right now. I don't think that you meant this because I know you well, but this is what's happening, you know? And then it's also to rectify the mistake, because we all make mistakes, but it's also how we react to like being told, how we correct, and what we do moving forward, right? So I mean, like, if you do something that people are like, oh, that's kind of sexist, or that's kind of blah, 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 or I'm surprised that you hired an all-male camera team, or whatever, you know, like things like that. Like, I mean, I'm totally all for equality, and I feel bad because there's a lot of white straight men that are great men, but they feel like they are now getting pigeonholed into the horrible old white straight men group, when they might be great, upstanding citizens, fathers, husbands, brothers, and cameramen or filmmakers or whatever they do, but they're getting grouped into, and it's almost like oppressing them because of what they are as well. We're the oppressed are oppressing the ones based on what they look like, you know.
But I can tell you, sorry, like I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
No, but like I can tell you, as a person who through university had pretty much the same crew that I worked with for everything that I made. And it was they're all white males, you know, in that sense. Like, but I never thought of them as, oh, like I have these white males that I'm collaborating with. Like for me, I'm like, oh, like
yeah,
they're good.
I know what you mean.
Like for me, there was no filter of like the fact that, oh, like
we should hire you because you're white and straight and male. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like I'm like, if I got to work with somebody who is a female, or like any like gender for that matter, and or like whatever, and I would feel as, oh yeah, like let's work together, you know. Not,
I think that's where it can feel conflicting too, because I have a DP that I've worked with on a few projects who I love. His name's Mackenzie McLean. Love him immensely. Straight, white, male, you know, extremely talented. But I think the conflict can come in when you're like, oh, what if there's a female DP that someone mentioned? What if there's a female Japanese DP? You know, like certain things where it's like, am I working with her only because she's female and she's Japanese, or do we collaborate well together? Is she talented? Does she know how to work the camera? Does she know how to get her shots in? Is she slow? Is she fast? Because then the thing is like, who's the best person for the job? It's not who's the best woman, who's the best man, who's the best minority, who's the, you know, but then sometimes when you look at grant applications, it feels like who's ticking all the boxes.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, it's a hard position to be in, because you want to get funding to make your projects and have all the right people that you collaborate really well with. But what if they're all white and male and straight, you know, like, and there was a huge thing on Twitter recently about this with a filmmaker going on a rant about Dan Lyon at Telefilm, because he's just like, you know, I developed this script and, you know, you talk about gender parity and you talk about diversity, but Telefilm's never described or given a definition of what their term of diversity means. So he's like, I'm a diverse filmmaker and I've developed this script with you for 6 months, but now you've denied me because I have a male creative team, but they're all diverse. So they're all male, but they're all diverse. So, you know, like, it's kind of like everyone wants to have the equal opportunity, but then when you fill out a grant form, it's like, I'm repeating myself, but like, who ticks the most boxes? And it's kind of silly, because it's like, if everyone by chance is diverse, amazing, but what if they're also talented? Amazing, but then you're kind of like pigeonholing all those white straight males, you know?
No, if
now being white and female is not enough. You got to be like diverse and female and have a, you know, like all those things, as you know.
No, and that's the thing. See, for me, like, if I always think of it in the flip side, right? Like, what I'm saying is coming from the awareness of the fact that if anybody came to me and said, oh, you know, I want to give you this opportunity because you are a woman of color, I would question it. I would say, wait,
yeah,
is this only because I'm a woman of color?
yes.
Or do you think I'm right for this part or this job? Like,
yes.
You know, am I, like, it's almost like, am I your token, this, like, person in your crew or person? Like, I'm like, that would really throw me off. I would take a major hit in terms of, like, my idea of, like, belief in capability. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
like, you know, am I doing it right? Or, like, even if, like, let's say I took it and then I know myself to know that I'd constantly feel like, but are they giving me this free pass and let me, like, am I doing the job right? Or, like,
are they going to give me honest feedback? Yeah, totally. I agree with you.
Because when I fit that, like, thing that they
that
need,
box
like,
that they're ticking. Yeah,
like,
woman,
you know,
person of color. Yeah,
you know, and I'd be like, and I, like, that's the thing, instead of, like, the fact that, oh, I want to give you this opportunity, but because you're talented. Oh, and hey, like, you know, like, you are a woman and you are a person of color. Like, that's not going to change. I am a woman and a person of color. Like, it's not going to change. But, like, if you're using me to tick a box versus you're hiring me because you think I'm the right person for it, like, then you're elevating that person's, like, confidence, that person's place, and giving that person that space in your industry, right? Like, you're doing that by ticking a box. You're just, like, you're telling them that this is the box that you fit in. Stay there. Right?
Yeah, it's a hard place to be. It's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We just need to rise up and be the bosses so that we make all the decisions.
But, like, coming back to, like, something I think that is very important, especially right now, given that everything that we're going through with the pandemic and, like, the standstill, there are a lot of people out there who I know like are starting out, like I'm 5 years into this, like you are more, and we're still growing and like finding our footing. But for somebody who's like, this is like day one, like I'm trying to get out there and join this industry, especially like here, the Canadian film industry. What would you say, do's, don'ts, like skill sets? Like what are the things that they need to work on to keep in mind? Like how do you break into this industry? Like how do you do that?
In what capacity though? Like who, like which role?
I would say every
Any role?
yeah, because you have that like on camera, off camera experience. I feel like I would be remiss if I don't ask you that story.
Well, I think that like if it's day one for an actor out there, day one for a filmmaker out there, you just have to you have to hustle, you have to grind. It's going to be a long hike up that hill, but start with something, right? Whether that be as an actor, start with a class, start with an agent who's willing to take on someone who doesn't have any training or experience yet. Try and get on with an agent and read a lot, do your research, find out things, the do's and don'ts of like set etiquette, encouraging things that help you along your way. But it's a long journey. It's not like I don't know, 15 years into this ish. I make a good living. I have a good network of people. I feel really empowered doing what I do, and I still have big goals for my future. But it's a long journey. Like you're not going to hit anything overnight. You're not going to become the next Steven Spielberg overnight. You're not going to become the next Amy Adams overnight, or whoever you want to aspire to be. Viola Davis is amazing too. I saw a video of her. She's got like a Tony, an Emmy, an Oscar. I think.
Sorry, one sec. But this might cut out.
Oh, okay. Because you
I'll start. No, because it's like a 1 hour.
Oh, okay.
Thing. If it does, like I'll just start a new one.
Okay. So. I was just gonna say I can wrap it up, but I was just gonna say like she's the equivalent of Meryl Streep, but she's still subjectified. She's like she still has a huge journey against like oppression and racism and all that stuff. It's not easy, and just to keep doing it because you love it. Keep researching, keep doing classes, keep PAing, keep
Yeah.
I mean, everyone starts somewhere. Everyone's path is different.
Truly. I think you and I can both attest to that, like 100%. But our journey as creators, like for both of us, has been so different in the same industry. So I think the question, though, like I was talking about, was, I mean, of course, like I think you answered it from one perspective, like in terms of how to go at it, like personally speaking. But I feel if you have to give, like, if let's say this is like 101 like whatever
basics
like,
of how to get into film,
like 101, how do you start out, like, how do you break in the industry? Like what would you say are the things that are like must be done, or like should be adopted or should be checked out? Like one thing you've said is classes, or getting experience, whether it's PAing or stuff like that. But what else would you say? Like whether it's like applying for grants or
I have a friend right now that has wanted to do a documentary on the toilet paper industry. So she started this 1 month class with Rain Dance online. And so they right now, because of COVID, they're doing it all online. They do weekly calls and all that stuff. And lessons and everything. And basically every week they have a target and something to submit. By the end of it, they have to pick their topic, but by the end of it, they have to make a short film.
Okay.
That's a great way, because she's like, I have no work to show for the Ontario Arts Council or to put into a grant application. So she's like, I'm going to do this. It's a great way to do it, especially because it's online. Pretty much everyone that applies gets in. You get to learn, but you also get to do, and you kind of get to learn the practical steps of making a film. That's a great way to do it. You could also go to film school if you wanted to dive in that heavily and that intensely. And then you start to get to know teachers and professors, and they can connect you with people, because most of the time they're professors, say for like CFC or Ryerson or whatever. They're people that have worked in the industry. So definitely like school or like an online thing through like Sundance or Rain Dance or TIFF, you know, there's lots of things like that. Some are more competitive than others, and you have to have a reel or you have to already have experience. And then through that, like, I mean, if you don't know anyone in the industry, it could be hard, right? Like networking with those people, especially if you're like, I don't feel like anyone knows that they want to grip or knows that they want to do camera if they haven't done it practically, though.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So those people, I feel like, do go to school, and that's kind of how they get into that world. Or if they're an electric or rigger, you know what I mean? Like they already have the trades, and I think that you have to know you want to do that trade and you go to school. But I mean, like, you can do a ton of research through like ACTRA. They let you know who PMs are, like every active production. You could be that guy that cold calls, that guy or girl that's like calling PMs or calling line producers or whatever, and everyone starts to hear that name and they're like, yeah, that person's been cold calling. Maybe we should get them in as an office PA, see what they can do. Let's see. Because most of the time in the film industry, as you and I know, it's like through who you know.
Yep.
So, I mean, like if you don't have a neighbor that's a PM, or you don't have not the prime minister, but a production manager, but I mean, like, it's funny because you do get really used to terms in the film industry. I said DP to my cousin who's a police officer, and DP to police officers is displaced person, not to director of photography in the film in the police industry. Yep. And so it's funny you get used to terms, but like that would be my suggestion: either go to school, take classes, or just start networking. And you can also get a lot of research and information from like the DGC, the WGC, the Directors Guild of Canada, the Writers Guild of Canada, IATSE. There's lots of websites where you can find out what's going on. You can find out what's shooting in Toronto. You can find out what's shooting in Vancouver and LA and New York. And then if you want to be a filmmaker, like go make a film. Everyone now has the ability with a smartphone to make a film that is high quality. Go do it. Like practically try it out. See if you like editing. See if you like putting things together. See what your shots look like. See if you're like, hey, I know I want to do this, but I don't have the skill set yet. Go take some classes. Go to school. Watch everything on YouTube that you can about how-tos. There's also, what's the one that like all the actors, directors, writers have been doing, like those one-on-ones that you can pay for?
Master classes?
Yeah, masterclass. Like you lose nothing. You're sitting at your laptop. You can do that. I think they're a couple $100s or whatever.
Yeah, I think so.
Still wisdom.
You get like multiple passes, or you get for one, or
yeah, but I mean, like, it's still information. Just get as much information as you can, and then go after it, right? Like acting almost seems simpler to get into because you can just do classes and you can get an agent and you can start auditioning. And then if you start booking, you'll get on set and you'll meet all those people. But if you're trying to get into film crew world, it's a little bit harder. But I think that you got to be resourceful and you got to hustle.
I think it's also, I think it's what you said, right? It's also the fact that we have the ability to create at any point in time. And I think that's a huge thing right now, like the benefit that you have, whether it's simple online, like you create like shorts or you create stuff and like or do like a YouTube thing. There's so many people who are going through it through YouTube or through so many different online platforms, or doing like music videos, or like there's so like, you know, there's so many different alleyways out there. But I think also in that sense of what you were saying, like there's what you said about not everybody knows what they want to into, that they want to be a grip, or they, you know, unless you actually practically do that, which I can tell you, like there's like doing film school, there's so many people who I started out with who wanted to be directors, like, you know, it was like a class full of I want to be the next like but like by the end of like that entire program, which was intensive and highly competitive, people were like, no, but I don't want to direct, like I don't enjoy it. I don't want to direct.
They're like, I really don't want to be doing storyboards, and I really don't want to work with the actor. Like I've met people that are like, I don't like actors, and you're like, but you're a director. How do you not like actors? You know, like
no, but I don't like being on set. Like I prefer like editing, sitting in a room and focus and editing, or I want to do sound, or you know. And I think that's a great thing about film school or like doing the classes, is because you get that kind of exposure in all these various departments before you decide and say, this is all that I feel like I want to do.
Yes.
Because you don't know.
Yeah. And you know what? There's something to be said about classic institutional training and then learning on your own. Mike Clattenburg, who we worked with on Crawford, isn't classically or traditionally trained. He learned by doing. And I think if you do it that way, you actually learn probably more about what specifically is your style. What do you like? What don't you like? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? What you really are passionate about? You know, like, so traditional schooling may work for a lot of people. It might not work for a lot of people. But I think just finding what speaks to your rhythm and speaks to your truth, I think is really important.
No, 100%. And I feel like it's also taking that chance and giving each other chances to do that, especially as you're emerging, to also acknowledge other emerging artists and collaborate, you know, like I'm working on collaborations right now, and I can tell you it's so amazing to do that. But I know that like in film school, like I enjoyed cinematography. I did a little bit of it, but like I didn't focus on it. Like I was focused, I specialized in direction. That was my focus, and that's what I want to do. But until Deepa put that camera in my hand and like made me DP, which was really came out of nowhere. Like, and she does a pretty good like reenaction of my reaction when she said, "Okay,
I can't
so
wait to
now
see
you're
that one
shooting
day."
the film." And like she did this on stage at TIFF when it premiered, and she said, TIFF, for everybody who doesn't know, is the Toronto International Film Festival, and when it premiered, this is in 2016, and she went on stage and she said, "Yeah, so when I was talking to like her, and then I said, yeah, okay, now you're shooting the film. This is the film, so you need to shoot it." Like Michael said, "What?" I kid you not. Like I just said, "What?" Like in person, but internally, like it didn't register.
You were like, "Are you insane?"
Like it didn't register. I'm telling you, it didn't even register that I was the DP until like after we edited, and the editor is telling me, "Do you want?" Because I was so like hyped, like, "Oh my god, TIFF! Like, oh my god, there are people. Like, we're gonna like do tickets." I was like this hyperactive, and I was 22 at this point, so I'm like this hyperactive 22-year-old running around this production office, being like, "Oh my god, this is so much fun," and the editor is just looking at me saying, "You know what a big deal this is, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially for you, like, you know, you understand." And I'm like, "Yeah, like, I mean, like, it's so great. Like, we're all gonna be in this together." She's like, "No, like, you're a 22-year-old who's a key crew member at like a DP for a feature film made by such an amazing director.
Yeah.
Premiering at like one of the biggest festivals.
Like just to like hand you that golden egg. Oh my god.
And like to be in like this huge festival, one of the biggest festivals in North America, and it's premiering there.
Yeah.
You understand what this means? It's like there's so many people who like only after 10 years of being in the industry, like
20 years,
get like a short film to TIFF, you know. And I'm like, okay. And it did, like, that's when it hit me like a whammy. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing, you know what? Like, we can give advice to people that are starting out, but you never know where anyone's path is going to lead them. You would never be like, "Hey, do what I did," because that is something that you would never be like, "Oh, I never knew that would happen." You never know what opportunities are going to come your way.
No, I can tell you, I went to Harvard to like when we were on this like tour with the film with Anatomy of Violence, trying to like because the entire point was to create awareness and do that. And I'm at Harvard, and all I was doing there was like, you know, recording the panel and whatever. And this guy comes up to me, and I think he went to like NYU, like Tisch at NYU, and he was learning filmmaking. And he comes to me and he says, "Can I ask you a question?" So I said, "Sure." Like, and I'm wondering, how do I answer? I'm like, please don't say something stupid. And he asked me, "So I want to know, how is it that you get to work with famous people?" And I can tell you, like, for a second I was like, is he kidding, or is this actually his question? And I was like, and I just said, like I'm not sure. Like I said, no, like for example, you're working with like Deepa, who is like this huge like personality, like who's done such amazing work, who's so well known. And like how like and I was like, well, like I didn't go and like work with Deepa because I was like, oh, like you are this famous person, like
Yeah.
like that's not what I was thinking. Like in fact, to me, like she's family, right?
Yeah.
Like now, like like she's um like basically like my second mom here in Toronto, like so like so when somebody asked me this question, I said, but like that's not the point. Like sure that could be your goal, like if
Yeah.
that's your goal, but I'm saying that like I didn't have a specific like I need to do this and this and then I'll be able to work with this famous person.
And I feel like those are the kind of people that are led by ego. Those are the people that might not be. Maybe he had a poor way of asking the question. Maybe he's trying to work with more famous people, more well-known talent. But I feel like hearing that, it's someone who's in it for the wrong reasons. You know?
I mean, I see it, but like, then I also acknowledge for me, like, because like I feel like for me, there's really no judgment. I'm like, yeah, live and let live. Like you do you. Like
For sure. But I mean, like, what's his motivation?
No,
You know,
no.
what's
So
the
for me, like
motivation for
asking
wanting
me
to
that
work?
question, like I was so like, how do I handle this in the most like how do I answer and just say I don't know like
Yeah.
and I really did say like I'm not sure like how
Yeah.
to answer this question because like my journey and how I'm here like, right now like till this day I'm in shock like it's happened so largely because of the opportunities that Deepa has given me or the role that my family's played and, like pushing me or like pushing me through this door and being like do this and like like let's make this introduction or like let's like push that like total credit to my dad like honestly without whom I wouldn't have like been here right now like doing all this but and that's the thing right like it's about like but even now like there's so much like I like hopefully have a long journey ahead but I think it's even, for example, like meeting you, like, like I still remember when I met you on Crawford, and like everybody thought like we've known each other all our lives because we used to roam around set, like schoolgirls, like hand in hand, like legs, like skipping around, which used to throw everybody off. And that's like, but like, to even know, I'm like, okay, like this is somebody who I have so much respect for like personally like who I feel is so great and I feel what if we create like something together like you never know who you can meet, who can be your collaborator like I can tell you the people I'm collaborating with right now I happened to meet one of them by chance like who I like who had connected with like years ago but never met and reached out to me like in the beginning of this year and like now I'm like I have this amazing group of like some about 10 12 people who I'm like working with and who want to be like oh like you handle this like we want you to direct and thing and I'm like you don't even know me and like you've put this faith in me but I think it's that like taking that shot and just like going with it
and I think that's something you can't really tell people what is going to or not going to happen in their career, right? Like you can go, you can hustle, you can do all the right things and nothing will happen. You can luck of the draw be Kate Moss and be like picked off the street or you know what I mean? Like you never know where your life's going to lead you. You just have to kind of follow your heart, go with what works for you. And now look at all these amazing people you have in your life.
Like you.
I do hear a little toddler that's up.
Yes. So I feel like that actually I feel like we've
gotten to the crux of it.
Like, in this. And I feel like that was like something I felt like was a really important question right now. And it's something I've been asked by people who've been starting out. So I was like, okay, like to get somebody who's more experienced and would actually have some answers for them. I think you've said a lot, like whether it's classes or whether it's like putting yourself out there or just creating or, doing that or getting like an agent and going auditioning and just keep shooting your shot, I guess, right? Like just doing it, right? trying to live by it every single day and keep growing, because like I think our industry is constantly growing, so like it's changing, so to take that into account.
Yeah.
But even as actors, I feel like, you know, we're talking about creators creating, like, but I feel like actors also work with like emerging filmmakers and creators and put yourself out there. Like, you know, you guys can grow together. Like, you know, not you guys, we guys can grow together. And I think, yeah. So from my part, I just want to say thank you. Like, I'm so grateful.
Thank you very much
for you being here today and taking out this time, given the fact that you have a now waking up 2-year-old who I love so much, and and also grateful for being my ally as a like fellow female in this industry, and my ally as like just a creator and as a friend and somebody to I can lean on. So thank you for that. And yeah, any thoughts you have?
Well, thank you for doing this. And I know that you told me about this when you had this idea. So good for you for doing it, because a lot of people have ideas and they don't execute them. So congratulations. Thank you. Wherever this takes you, whether it's just a journey to learn from other people or if it benefits other people, amazing. And you are a lovely, lovely, lovely human being. And I love you a lot. So I'm excited for when we finally get to collaborate on our own project together.
Yes, I think Chris being Stephanie's husband, who's been pushing this for a long time, I think he will be like, yes. Like,
he'll be the guy like in the grandstands being like, I know them.
I made this happen. I get credit.
The goof.
But yes, thank you. And thank you everybody who's joined us today in this conversation. And also sending you, Stephanie, like your family, everybody on here, friends, family, like people who I know, don't know, all of you amazing humans out there. A lot of love, a lot of light, good vibes, and stay safe. And yeah, just take care of yourself during this entire crazy situation that we've got going on globally, and be well and stay blessed.